tengo una palabra ardiendo en mi corazón.
I have a word that's burning in my heart.
La he titulado de la siguiente manera:
I've entitled this message this way:
3 movimientos para salvar una relación.
3 movements to save relationships.
3 movimientos para unir lo que está separado.
3 movements to unify that which is
En
separated.
los próximos minutos
In the next few minutes,
voy a hablarte de 3 movimientos
I'm going to talk to you about 3
que
movements
podrían salvar tu matrimonio,
that could save your marriage,
que podrían salvar tu familia,
that can save your
que
family,
podría salvar tu comunidad,
that can save your community,
incluso que podría salvar tu nación.
and that inclusive maybe can save the nation.
Yo no sé si te has dado cuenta de esto,
I don't know if maybe you realize this or
pero
not,
parece que todo está atentando en contra de la unidad entre nosotros.
but it seems like there's a lot of pressure to disrupt the unity that we all have.
Hay una fuerza del infierno
There's a diabolical
que
force
está intentando divorciar los
that's
matrimonios,
seeking to separate marriages,
que los padres y los hijos se separen emocionalmente,
that parents and sons and daughters would be separated
que nos
emotionally,
dividamos en la nación por cuestión de color de piel
that we would be divided according to the color of our skin,
o por posición política.
or because of our political position.
Pero hoy vengo a hablarte
But today I want to talk to
de
you
cómo Jesús
that how Jesus
quiere unir lo que aparentemente es imposible de
wants to
unir.
unite that which seems impossible to
Y
unite.
ante todas las fuerzas que nos están intentando separar,
And in front of all of the forces that are trying to separate
hoy le
us,
vamos a dar un golpe al infierno
we're going to hit a blow to the hell
diciendo que el divorcio no va a ser una opción para nosotros.
that's saying divorce is not going to be our destiny.
La separación no va a ser una opción para nosotros.
Separation is not going to be our
La
destiny.
división no es una opción
And
para nosotros.
divisiveness is not going to be our destiny.
¿Está bien?
Amen?
Quiero contarte una historia.
I want to tell you a story.
Está en la Biblia.
It's out found in the Bible.
Fue la última cena de Jesús con sus discípulos.
It was the Last Supper of Jesus with his disciples.
Era una cena muy emotiva,
It was a very emotional supper
porque Jesús sabía que unas horas después
because Jesus knew that only a few hours later
iba a enfrentarse a la cruz.
he would be confronting the cross.
Eso significaba un gran dolor,
That meant a great deal of pain,
pero también la esperanza de iniciar un movimiento que transformaría al mundo.
but also the hope of initiating a movement that would change the world.
Y iba a dejar el encargo de ese movimiento en esos 12 personajes.
And he was going to leave in charge of that movement 12 personalities.
Y los vio esa última noche
And he saw them in that last night.
y pensó cómo constantemente estaban compitiendo entre ellos,
And he realized that they're constantly competing among one
cómo
another.
siempre estaban discutiendo acerca de quién sería el mayor en el reino de Dios,
And there was always arguing about who was going to be greater in the kingdom of God.
preguntando cuántas veces debían perdonarse los unos a los otros.
Asking how many times should we forgive one another.
Y me imagino que Jesús pensó esto:
And I'm thinking that Jesus thought to himself,
me voy a marchar
I'm going to leave,
y el equipo se me va a desmembrar.
and this team doesn't have a great destiny.
Se va a acabar el movimiento.
This movement may come to an end.
Necesito dejar algo en sus memorias.
I need to leave something graved in their memories.
Una imagen tan impactante en sus mentes
An image so impactful in their minds
que cuando ellos quieran dividirse por cualquier estupidez,
that whenever they want to divide for just stupid things,
recuerden lo que ocurrió esta noche en este lugar,
that they would remember what happened tonight in this
y
place.
el recuerdo de esto les mantenga unidos.
And that the memory of what happens tonight will keep them unified.
Entonces Jesús no dijo algo,
And so Jesus did not say something,
hizo algo.
he did something.
Hizo algo inolvidable.
He did something unforgettable.
Hizo algo que creo que mantuvo unido a ese grupo de discípulos
He did something that I believe kept this group of disciples united
y puede mantener unido tu matrimonio, tu familia y tu comunidad.
and can keep united your family, your marriage, and your community.
Vamos a descubrirlo en el Evangelio
We're
de
going to
Juan,
discover this in the book of John.
capítulo 13.
In John chapter 13, this is what it says beginning in verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival that Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothing, he wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin, began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "Do you not realize now what I'm doing? But later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you will have no part with me." Jesus, "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not every one of you is clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I am your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet."
¡Wow! 3 movimientos para salvar una relación
3 movements to save a relationship.
que podemos observar en este acto del lavamiento de pies.
We can observe this in the washing of feet that Jesus did.
Quiero que nos pongamos en contexto.
I want you to understand the context
Lo que
here.
acabamos de leer ocurrió hace 2000 años en la cultura hebrea.
What we just read happened 2,000 years ago in the Hebrew context.
En aquella época,
In those days,
los hebreos no vestían calzado cerrado como el que tenemos hoy en día.
the Hebrews did not have shoes like we have with closed shoes.
Ellos vestían una especie de sandalias de cuero
They would have leather sandals
que dejaban parte de sus pies al descubierto.
that would leave their toes and their feet open.
Ellos tenían que caminar largas distancias a pie,
They had to walk long distances afoot
de aldea en aldea,
from town to town,
por caminos sin asfaltar,
through roads that weren't asphalted,
llenos de polvo en verano
full of dust in the
y
summertime
llenos de barro en el invierno.
and full of mud in the wintertime.
Y después de una jornada caminando,
And after a long journey,
ya fuese por el polvo, el barro o la caca de burro,
either because of the dust or the mud or the droppings of the donkey,
esos pies
their feet
quedaban más negros
would be super unclean,
que la conciencia de algunos.
even more than the conscience of some people.
Cuando llegaban a una casa,
When they would arrive to a house,
acostumbraban a hacer comunión alrededor de la mesa.
their custom was to have communion around a table.
Se sentaban alrededor de la mesa para comer y conectar de corazón a corazón con la
They
familia.
would sit around a table so that they could eat and connect with one another around a family table.
Pero en aquella época las mesas no eran como hoy en día.
But back in those days, the tables weren't like our Western tables
No eran
are.
mesas altas, eran mesas bajitas.
They weren't tall tables like ours. They were very short little tables.
Y ellos no se sentaban en sillas,
And they wouldn't sit in a seat like we have here.
sino que se recostaban sobre unos cojines.
They would lie down on some pillows.
Y en esta posición,
And in this position,
los pies de
the
unos
feet of someone
quedaban demasiado cerca de la cara de
would be very
otros.
close to someone else's face.
Por lo tanto, era una cuestión de higiene
So it was just a cleanliness issue
y de buena educación
and of proper manners
lavarse los pies
to wash their feet
antes de sentarse a la mesa de la comunión.
before sitting down to the dinner table.
Por eso en toda casa hebrea,
So that's why in every Hebrew household,
en la entrada
at the entrance,
había un barreño con agua,
there would be a basin with water,
una toalla,
there would be a towel,
para que cada uno se lavase sus propios pies
so people could wash their own feet
antes de entrar a la mesa de la comunión.
before entering into the dining room.
Sin embargo, en la época de Jesús,
But in the days of Jesus,
tristemente,
sadly enough,
como en muchas épocas,
like in a lot of other places,
había gente rica y gente pobre.
there was very rich people and very poor people.
Y la gente rica tenía esclavos.
People that were rich would have servants.
Y como una manera de ofrecer un servicio a sus invitados
And as a way to offer a service to their guests
o a su familia,
or to their family,
se designaba a un esclavo la tarea de lavador de pies.
they would designate one servant as the foot washer.
Pero era una tarea tan humillante,
But it was such a humiliating task,
tan humillante,
so humiliating,
que se seleccionaba al esclavo de menor rango de la casa,
they would select the servant with the lowest ranking in the house,
al más pequeño de todos,
the smallest of all,
para hacer la tarea de lavador de pies.
to do the foot washing in the house.
Muy bien, este es el contexto de lo que acabamos de
This is the
leer.
context of what we just read about.
Alrededor de esa mesa,
Around that table,
en esa última cena,
in that Last Supper,
había 12 discípulos con los pies sucios.
there were 12 disciples with dirty feet.
Sin embargo, no había ningún esclavo para hacer la tarea de lavador de
But there was
pies.
no servant to wash their feet.
Sí había un barreño,
Sure, there was a basin.
sí había agua,
Yeah, there was water.
sí había una toalla,
Yeah, there was a towel.
pero no había ningún discípulo
But there was no disciple
dispuesto a hacer una tarea tan humillante
willing to do such a humiliating task
como lavar los pies de ningún otro.
like washing the feet of another person.
Hasta que de repente
Until suddenly,
Jesús hizo algo escandaloso.
Jesus did something scandalous.
Escúchame bien,
Listen to me well.
no puedo exagerar
I'm not exaggerating this
al decir que lo que Jesús hizo fue escandaloso.
by telling you that what Jesus did was scandalous.
¿Alguna vez has estado en un ambiente
Have you ever been in an atmosphere
donde alguien rompe el protocolo?
where someone breaks the protocol?
¿Donde alguien rompe el esquema social?
Where someone sort of breaks what is customary?
¿Donde alguien hace algo que supuestamente no hay que hacer?
When someone does something that you're really not supposed to do?
Y tú sientes eso que llamamos vergüenza ajena.
And where you feel a little bit what's called sort of stranger
No
embarrassment.
quieres mirar.
You don't even want to look at
Mira,
it.
no puedo exagerar.
I can't even exaggerate.
No puedo exagerar
I can't
al
exaggerate
decir que lo que Jesús hizo
to say what Jesus
fue
did
escandaloso.
was
Se
scandalous.
puso de pie,
He got up.
se quitó su manto de autoridad de rabino,
He took the mantle of authority of a rabbi.
se ciñó una toalla alrededor de la cintura
He put a towel around his
y
waist.
como si fuese un esclavo,
And as though he were a servant,
empezó a lavar los pies de sus
he
discípulos.
started to wash the feet of each of his disciples.
Allí nadie aplaudió,
No one was clapping back there.
todo el mundo estaba en tensión.
Everybody was in
¿Qué
tension.
estaba haciendo Jesús?
What is Jesus doing?
Nadie decía nada,
No one said anything,
pero todo el mundo pensaba lo mismo.
but everybody was thinking the same
Hasta que
thing.
de repente Pedro,
Until suddenly Peter,
que según los últimos estudios teológicos tenía sangre
that
hispana,
according to the latest theological studies, he was part Hispanic.
dijo lo que todo el mundo estaba esperando allí.
He said what everybody was thinking already.
Confrontó a Jesús
He confronted
y
Jesus.
dijo, ey, 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 ey,
He
ey,
said,
ey,
whoa.
¿qué estás haciendo?
What are you doing?
Tú eres el maestro.
You're the rabbi.
Yo soy el discípulo.
I'm the disciple.
Tú eres el mayor.
You're major.
Yo soy el menor.
I'm minor.
Esto no es así.
You can't do it this
No
way.
son las reglas.
These are not the
No
rules.
es el protocolo.
This is not the protocol.
Jesús,
Jesus,
no me lavarás los pies jamás.
you will never wash my feet.
Y ante una declaración tan coherente como esa,
And before such a strong declaration,
porque era culturalmente coherente,
because it was culturally right to say that,
se hubiese esperado que Jesús dijese,
You would have expected Jesus to have said,
has respondido bien, Pedro.
oh, you responded right,
Pasaste
Peter.
el examen.
Hey, you passed the test.
Agarra el barreño y lávame los pies a mí.
Bring the basin and wash my feet, Peter.
Sin embargo, Jesús
But Jesus instead,
confronta a Pedro
he confronts
y le
Peter.
dice, no estás entendiendo nada.
And he says, Peter, you don't understand
Tienes la
anything.
mente muy condicionada por este
You
sistema.
have your mind very conditioned by this
Todavía
system.
no piensas como pensamos en el
You don't
reino.
understand. You don't think like we think in the kingdom of
Y le
God.
dice, Pedro,
He says, Peter,
Pedro.
Peter.
le dice esta frase.
He says this phrase
Esta frase que ha estado ahí
This
desde que se
phrase
escribió la Biblia,
that's been there for several thousand years in the Bible.
pero que ha cobrado un significado tan trascendente para mí.
But there's a transcendent significance to this.
Le dice, Pedro,
He says, Peter,
si no te lavo los pies,
if I don't wash your feet,
no tendrás parte conmigo.
you have no part with me.
¿Qué le estaba diciendo Jesús a Pedro?
What was Jesus saying to Peter?
Lo mismo que nos está intentando decir a
The
nosotros
same
hoy.
thing that he's trying to tell us today.
Jesús le dijo a Pedro,
Jesus said to Peter,
Pedro,
Peter,
si te lavo los pies,
if I wash your feet,
estaré construyendo una plataforma
I will be building a platform
sobre la cual edificar nuestra relación.
on which we will build our relationship.
Pedro,
Peter,
si te lavo los pies,
if I wash your feet,
tú tendrás parte conmigo
you will have part with
y
me,
yo tendré parte contigo.
and I will have part with you.
Pedro,
Peter,
si te lavo los pies,
if I wash your feet,
aunque no lo entiendas ahora,
even though you don't understand it right
eso
now,
nos va a unir.
this is going to unify
Pedro,
us. Peter,
si te lavo los
if I
pies,
wash your feet,
seremos uno.
we will be united as one.
¿Qué estaba intentando enseñar Jesús a Pedro?
What was Jesus trying to teach
¿Qué estaba
Peter?
intentando enseñar Jesús a todos
What
nosotros?
was Jesus trying to teach all of us
Que la
here?
verdadera unidad
That the true unity,
no es un discurso político,
it's not a political discourse.
no es una idea bonita,
It's not just a beautiful ideology.
no es un contrato matrimonial firmado en el juzgado.
It's not a marital contract signed before the judges.
La verdadera unidad
The true unity
entre nosotros,
between us,
la verdadera unidad
the true unity
en nuestro matrimonio,
in our marriage,
en nuestra familia,
in our family,
en nuestra
in
comunidad,
our community,
en nuestra nación,
in our nation,
es una nueva manera de ver a nuestro prójimo.
it's a new way of seeing our neighbor.
Es un cambio de perspectiva.
It's a change of perspective.
Dejar de mirar al otro desde la superioridad hacia abajo
As we stop looking at another person from a superior attitude on down
y comenzar a mirarlo
and start to look at someone
desde esta posición,
from this position,
mientras tienes agarrados sus pies
as you have their feet in your
y
hand
te dispones a lavárselos.
and you have an attitude of washing their feet.
Jesús nos estaba enseñando
Jesus was teaching
el
them
camino para sanar las relaciones rotas,
the way to heal broken
para mantener
relationships,
unido lo que parece imposible de unir,
to keep united that which seems impossible
para
to
tener
unite,
relaciones fuertes.
to have strong
Que
relationships.
no se trata tanto de legislar leyes
It's not about legislating
o
laws
firmar
or about
contratos
signing contracts
o hacer promesas.
or making
Se
promises.
trata de un cambio de perspectiva.
It's about changing our
Es
perspective.
una nueva manera de ver al otro.
It's a new way of looking at people
Una nueva
around
manera
us.
de ver a nuestra esposa.
A new way of looking at our spouse.
Una nueva manera de ver a nuestro esposo.
A new way of looking at our husband.
Una nueva manera de ver a nuestros hijos.
A new way of looking at our
Una
children.
nueva manera de ver a nuestros
A
padres.
new way of looking at our parents.
Una nueva manera de ver a nuestros hermanos.
A new way of looking at our brothers
Una
and
nueva manera de
sisters.
ver a nuestros vecinos.
A new way of looking at our neighbors.
Dejar de verlos desde aquí arriba
Stop
hacia allá
looking at
abajo
from here on down
y comenzar a verlos desde aquí abajo.
and to start to look at them from this
Hacia arriba.
perspective towards up.
Mientras te dispones a ser su lavador de
As
pies.
you have an attitude of willingness to wash their feet.
Porque seamos claros,
Because let's be clear about this.
el lavamiento de pies
The washing of feet,
es la manera de Dios
it's God's way
para mantenernos unidos.
to maintain us in unity.
Pero cuando esos discípulos salieron de aquella habitación,
But when those disciples exited that room,
salieron siendo diferentes,
they left with being different.
Diferentes entre ellos,
Different among themselves,
pero unidos.
but united.
Porque Jesús quiere unirnos.
Because Jesus wants to unite
No
us,
quiere hacernos a todos iguales.
but he doesn't want to make us all the same.
A veces se dice que para tener unidad tú tienes que ser como yo soy.
Sometimes we say that to be united, you have to be the way I am.
Y queremos transformar al otro a nuestro molde.
And we want to transform other people to our mold.
Pero en el reino de Dios
But
se
in the kingdom of
celebra la
God,
diversidad.
we celebrate diversity,
Dios quiere que delante del trono del Cordero
that before the throne of the Lamb,
esté representado toda lengua, toda
every
tribu, toda
language, every
nación,
tribe, every nation would be represented.
todo tipo de personas
Every type of person,
diferentes,
different,
pero unidas.
but united.
Dios no nos quiere hacer iguales.
God doesn't want to make us all the same,
Dios nos quiere unir en nuestra
but God wants
diferencia.
to unite us in our differences.
Porque seamos claros,
But let's be clear about
en el
this.
equipo de Jesús
In Jesus' team,
había gente muy diferente.
there were people that were very different.
Había algunos nacionalistas, celotes hebreos, terroristas.
There were some nationalists, zealots, Hebrews, almost terrorist-like.
Y también había funcionarios del imperio romano.
And then there were others, tax collectors for the Roman Empire.
Eso era más extremo que tener a un republicano y un demócrata juntos.
That was more extreme than having a Republican and a Democrat together.
En el equipo de
In
Jesús
Jesus' team,
había pescadores sin educación
they were fishermen without any formal
y
education.
fariseos doctos aprendiendo
And then there
juntos.
were Pharisees with doctorates that were learning together.
Hombres y mujeres
Men and women
caminando juntos como discípulos de
walking
Jesús.
together as disciples of Jesus.
Amos y esclavos
They were owners and servants
llamándose hermanos.
calling each other brothers.
Queridos, si eso no te parece revolucionario,
If
es
that
que no
doesn't
estás
seem
entendiendo nada.
revolutionary to you, then you don't know what revolutionary is.
Jesús
Jesus,
no esperó que la unidad surgiese.
he didn't wait for unity to surge.
Jesús provocó la unidad.
Jesus provoked unity.
Fue un catalizador de
He
unidad.
was a catalyst of unity.
Yo sé que algunos estáis esperando que la otra persona resuelva el problema.
I know that some of you are waiting for other people to resolve your problems.
Estoy esperando que mi mujer resuelva el
You're saying,
problema.
I'm waiting for my wife to resolve this
Estoy
problem.
esperando que mi marido resuelva el
I'm waiting for
problema.
my husband to resolve this
Estoy
problem.
esperando que mi papá resuelva el problema.
I'm waiting for my daddy to resolve this
No, estoy
problem.
esperando que mi hijo resuelva el
I'm waiting
problema.
for my son to take initiative in
Pero
this problem.
Jesús llevó
But
la
Jesus,
iniciativa.
he took the initiative.
Fue el
He
catalizador
was the catalyst
de la unidad.
of
¿Y
unity.
cómo lo hizo?
And how did he do it?
Lavando los pies.
Washing people's feet.
Y vamos a ver tres movimientos
And we're going to see three movements
en este acto.
in this act.
Tres movimientos que puedes salvar cualquier relación aquí.
Three movements that can save any relationship here.
Yo sé que algunos decís, ya hemos probado mucha consejería
You
matrimonial.
say, well, we've already tried a lot of marital counseling.
Ya hemos ido para ver si nuestra familia por fin resuelve el problema.
We've seen if our family maybe can solve the
Donde un
problem.
profesional.
I'm a professional
Y no,
maybe.
no tengo nada en contra de...
And I don't have anything
lo
against
profesional.
professionals doing it.
Pero hoy quizá aquí encontremos un elemento sanador para nuestras
But maybe
relaciones.
today God is going to demonstrate to us a healing element in this process.
Tres movimientos.
Three movements.
Primer movimiento.
First movement,
Inclinarse frente al otro.
to bow ourselves before the other.
Una vez más. Inclinarse frente al otro.
Once again, to bow ourselves before the other.
Y obviamente no estoy hablando aquí de una posición del cuerpo,
And obviously I'm not talking about a physical position,
tanto como estoy hablando aquí de una posición del corazón.
more than I'm talking about the position of our heart.
¿Cuántos de los que están aquí saben
How many of you that are here know
que lo que puede impedirnos inclinarnos frente al otro
what causes us to really bow ourselves before others,
no es tanto una rodilla hinchada
it's not as much that our knees don't work that
como
well,
es un orgullo
but
hinchado?
more ego that's inflated.
Lo que estoy intentando decir
What I'm trying to tell you here
es que el orgullo
that our pride,
es el mayor enemigo de la unidad.
it's the worst enemy of unity.
El orgullo es un destructor de relaciones.
Our pride is the destructor of our
Ha sido mi
relationships.
orgullo
It's been my
lo que
pride
casi destruye las relaciones más importantes en mi
that's
vida.
almost destroyed the relationships that are most important in my
El
life.
orgullo casi destruye mi matrimonio.
My pride almost destroyed my marriage.
El orgullo es tu mayor enemigo,
Your pride is your worst enemy.
tu orgullo.
Your pride.
Por eso la Biblia dice
That's why the Word of God says
que Jesús,
that Jesus,
sabiendo que el Padre le había dado todas las cosas en sus manos
knowing that Jesus had given all things into his
y
hands,
que había salido de Dios y que a Dios iba,
and that he was from God and going to God,
en otras palabras,
in other words,
Jesús, sabiendo quién era,
Jesus, knowing who he was,
se ciñó como un esclavo para servir.
he presented himself as a servant to serve.
Aquí está el principio.
Here's the principle.
¿Estás listo?
Are you ready?
¿Estás lista?
Are you ready?
El que sabe quién es puede humillarse.
The person that knows their identity can humble themselves.
Lo voy a volver a decir.
I'm going to say it again.
El que sabe quién es puede humillarse.
The person that knows who he is can humble themselves.
Y puede hacerlo el primero.
And they can be the first ones to do it.
¿Qué digo puede? Puede y debe llevar la iniciativa de la humillación.
Not only can they, but they should take the initiative of unity.
Hay que estar muy seguro de tu identidad para poder humillarte frente al otro.
You have to be very secure in your identity to be able to humble yourself before someone else.
Y parece ser que en esa sala,
And it looks like in that room,
el único que realmente sabía quién era,
the only one that really knew who he was,
era Jesús.
it was Jesus.
Jesús
Jesus.
sabía
Jesus knew
que era el rey del universo,
he was the king of the universe.
el poseedor de cada átomo del cosmos.
He was the possessor of every atom in the cosmos.
Pero no tuvo el problema de actuar como si fuese un esclavo.
But he didn't have a problem acting as a servant.
Jesús sabía
Jesus knew
que el Padre le había dado toda autoridad
that the Father had given him all authority
del cielo, de la tierra
in
y hasta del
heaven and on
infierno
earth and under the earth.
en sus manos.
In his hands.
Y con esas manos llenas de autoridad
And with those hands full of authority,
limpió los pies mugrosos de sus orgullosos
he
discípulos.
washed the dirty feet of his disciples.
Jesús sabía
Jesus knew
que era el primogénito de la
he was the
creación,
firstborn of all creation.
el hermano mayor.
He was the older brother.
Pero no tuvo problema de mostrarse como el más pequeño de la
But he didn't have a
familia.
problem demonstrating himself as the smallest
¿Por qué?
among them and serving.
¿Por
Why?
qué?
Why?
Porque Jesús sabía quién era.
Because Jesus knew who he was.
Y el que sabe quién es
And the person that knows who they are,
no tiene la necesidad de demostrar nada.
they don't have to show who they are. They don't have to prove anything.
Demostrar nada.
They don't have to prove anything.
Nada.
Nothing.
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 Nada.
Nada. Por eso
That's why
me he dado cuenta
I've started to realize
de lo peligroso que es un cristiano
the dangerous it is to be a Christian
que tiene autoridad
that has authority
en su matrimonio,
in their marriage,
en su familia,
in their family,
con un grupo de trabajadores,
with their co-workers,
en una iglesia local,
in a local church,
pero que tiene falta de identidad en el corazón.
but doesn't have a clear sense of identity in their
Porque
heart.
cuando no se está definido por dentro,
Because when you're not defined in the inside,
se intenta demostrar por fuera.
you try to define yourself on the outside.
Y la mayoría de conflictos
And most of our conflicts
en los matrimonios,
in our marriage,
en las familias,
in the families,
en las iglesias locales,
in the local churches,
incluso en la política nacional,
even in the national politics,
es debido a personas
it's due to
que
people
intentan demostrar algo,
that are trying to show something, that demonstrate
que
something.
quieren demostrar quién tiene la
They're
razón,
trying to prove who's right.
que quieren demostrar quién manda,
They're trying to prove who's in charge.
que quieren demostrar quién es el bueno,
They're trying to prove who is the good
que
person.
quieren demostrar,
They want to show
que
something.
quieren demostrar,
They want to prove
que
something.
quieren demostrar.
They want to prove
Y
something.
de tanto intentar demostrar,
And so much trying to prove
solo
something,
demuestran que son unos acomplejados.
they're only showing that they have complexes and insecurities.
La inseguridad en el corazón
And insecurities in the heart.
te va a hacer agarrarte al orgullo
It'll cause you to grab onto
para
pride,
intentar demostrar.
to try to prove.
¿Cuántas veces
How many times
he tenido esta tentación
I've had this temptation
de demostrar en mi casa
to show in my house
quién es el macho?
who's the macho.
¿Quién es el hombre de la casa?
Who's the man of the house?
¿Quién tiene la razón?
Who's the one that's right in
¿Quién
this
es el
house?
líder?
Who's the leader?
Bien acomplejado yo,
My own complexes and
por dentro,
insecurities.
intentando demostrar.
Trying to demonstrate.
Y he peleado con mi esposa.
And I fought with my wife.
Y soy bueno peleando.
And I'm pretty good at fighting.
Hey, soy predicador.
Hey, I'm a preacher.
Manejo el arte de las palabras.
I manage the art of words.
Y yo sé que algunos hombres no me van a creer,
And I know that some men aren't going to believe me.
pero yo he ganado discusiones a mi mujer.
But I've actually won arguments with my wife.
Pero he ganado el argumento,
But I won the argument,
pero he perdido su
but I
corazón.
lost her heart.
Y puede ser que tú estés ganando el argumento,
And maybe you're winning the argument,
pero estés perdiendo lo que realmente es más importante,
but you're losing what's really most
que es el
important.
corazón de la otra
And it's the
persona.
heart of the other person.
Estás ganando la discusión.
You're winning the discussion.
Tienes la corona de vencedor sobre la
You have the
cabeza,
crown of victor on your head,
pero eres un rey en un reino solitario,
but you are the king in a kingdom that's alone.
porque ya nadie te aguanta, desgraciado,
Because no one can even manage to be around you.
porque quieres demostrar
Because you want to show.
y solo demuestras que eres un acomplejado,
And all that you're showing is your own interior insecurities.
como yo muchas veces.
Like me so many times.
Y seamos claros,
And let's be clear about this.
es muy fácil
It's very easy
mostrarse humilde
to show humility
delante de los desconocidos.
in front of those people that we don't know.
Ay, mirad qué humilde soy.
Oh, look how humble I am.
Pero qué difícil es demostrar humildad
But how difficult it is to show humility
delante de los que están cerca.
in front of the people that are closest to us.
Tu familia,
Your family,
tus hermanos.
your brothers.
La verdadera humildad
The true humility,
no se prueba con desconocidos,
you don't prove it with strangers.
se prueba con los tuyos.
You prove it with the people that are closest to you.
Porque seamos claros,
Because let's be clear about
esta
this.
posición,
This position,
inclinarse frente al otro,
to bow ourselves before another,
es una posición de vulnerabilidad.
it's a position of vulnerability.
Le estás dando poder a la otra
You're
persona,
really giving power to the other person.
a tu esposa,
To your
a tu
to your
esposo,
wife, to your
a
husband,
tus hermanos,
to your brothers,
para vencerte.
to conquer you.
Porque desde esta posición,
Because from this position,
¿cómo te defiendes?
how do you defend yourself?
¿Cómo te impones?
How do you put it over on someone?
¿Cómo te luces?
How do you show off?
Desde esta
From
posición
this position,
estás dando poder a la otra
you're giving
persona
power to another person.
para que te venza si quieres.
Because so they could overcome you if they wanted to.
Y este mundo
And in this world,
nos dice que esta posición
they tell us that this position,
es una posición cobarde.
it's a cowardice position.
Pero desde la perspectiva del reino de
But from
Dios,
the perspective of the kingdom of heaven,
esta es la posición más
this
valiente
is
que
the position
existe.
of most courage in the world.
Es saber que tú tienes el poder para vencer,
It's knowing that you have the power to conquer,
pero renunciar a ese poder
but to
por
renounce
amor.
that power for love.
¿Sabéis quién se puso en esta
You know
posición?
who got in this position?
¿Sabéis quién se puso en
You
esta
know who got in this
posición?
position?
Jesús.
Jesus did.
Porque cuando tú lo viste clavado en la cruz,
Because when you saw him nailed to the cross,
el mundo podría decir de Jesús
the world could say about Jesus
que él había perdido,
that he had lost,
que él era la víctima,
that he was a victim,
que había sido vencido por el imperio romano.
that he was overcome by the Roman Empire.
Pero yo sé,
But I
y
know,
tú deberías saber,
and you should know
que
as well,
Jesús era el
that
comandante de las
Jesus was the
huestes
commander of the
celestiales.
heavenly forces.
Y la Biblia dice
And the Bible tells
que
us
si Jesús en la cruz
that if Jesus on the cross,
hubiese susurrado,
if he would have whispered,
ya basta,
enough,
literalmente miles de ángeles
literally thousands of angels
hubiesen venido
would have descended
y hubiesen
upon,
aniquilado a todos sus
and they would have
enemigos.
annihilated his enemies.
Entonces dime una cosa,
So tell me something.
¿de parte de quién estaba el poder?
So who really had the power?
¿Quién era el más poderoso ahí?
Who was the most powerful person?
Jesús era el más
Jesus was the
poderoso.
most powerful
Pero Jesús
person.
renunció a
But
ese
Jesus
poder
renounced that power
en la cruz
in the cross
con un objetivo:
with one objective,
atraer tu corazón,
to get your heart,
el corazón de sus enemigos,
the heart of his enemies,
hacia Él.
towards him.
Él sabía
He knew
que para que tú pudieses tener una relación
to have
con
a
Él,
relationship with him,
para que Él pudiese unirte a Él,
so that you could be united to Jesus,
Él debía renunciar a su poder
that he had to renounce
y
his
debía ser
power,
crucificado.
that he had to be crucified.
Lo que estoy intentando decir
What I'm trying to tell you
es que para mantener un corazón unido,
to have a united heart,
alguien tiene que ser crucificado.
someone has to be crucified.
Para que haya unidad,
So that there could be unity,
alguien tiene que ser crucificado.
someone has to be crucified.
Alguien tiene que renunciar a su
Someone has
poder
to renounce their power
y decir, no me voy a
and
defender.
to say, I'm not going to defend,
Para traer el corazón de nuestra esposa,
to bring the heart of our
de nuestro
spouse,
esposo,
to bring the heart
de
of our
nuestros
husband,
hijos,
to bring the heart of our
de nuestros
kids,
padres,
to bring the heart of
de
our
nuestros
parents,
vecinos.
to bring the heart of our
Alguien
neighbors.
tiene que ser crucificado.
Someone has to be crucified.
Alguien tiene que
Someone
renunciar
has to
al
renounce
poder
to the power
en
that they
favor
have
de la
in favor of the
relación. Yo sé que
relationship.
no te gusta
I
escuchar
know you
esto,
don't like to hear that,
pero la relación
but the
en el
relationship
reino de Dios
in the kingdom of God
implica el camino de la cruz.
implies the way of the cross.
Porque en el reino de Dios
Because in the kingdom of
es
God,
más importante tener amor
it's more important to have love
que tener razón.
than to be right.
Que el que pierde,
The person that loses
gana.
wins.
Y el que se humilla,
The person that
será
humiliates himself
enaltecido.
is the one that will be lifted up.
ese es el camino
That's the road
de las relaciones en el reino.
of the relationships in the kingdom.
Y yo recuerdo algo.
I remember something.
Recuerdo que una vez Jesús me dijo algo.
I remember one time that the Spirit of God spoke to me.
Me dijo, Itiel, tengo buenos planes para ti,
I sensed that God was saying, I have good plans for you,
pero tu orgullo es un obstáculo.
but your pride is an obstacle.
Está destruyendo lo que yo quiero construir.
It's destroying what I want to build.
Por esa razón,
For that reason,
porque te amo,
because I love
te voy
you,
a dar a elegir.
I'm going to let you choose.
O te humillas
Or you humble yourself,
o te humillo.
or I will humble you.
Y creo que el Señor nos está dando esta opción.
I think God has given us that option.
O te humillas
Or you humble yourself,
o te humillo.
or I will humble you.
Yo recuerdo que era una temporada
There was a season in my
que
life
yo estaba en tensión con mi mujer.
I was in tension with my wife.
Ahora en perspectiva sé que era a causa de mi orgullo.
And now in retrospect, I realize it was because of my
Y
pride.
yo la empecé a ver como si fuese mi enemigo.
And I started to see her as though she were my enemy.
Hay algunos aquí que están sentados al lado de su pareja y en lo secreto piensan que es su enemigo.
And there are some of you right now that sitting are next to your couple, and you are thinking in your mind that they're your enemy.
Yo estaba discutiendo con
I
ella.
was fighting with her all the
Quería tener
time.
mis razones.
I wanted to be right.
Y cuando uno está enfadado,
And when someone is mad,
por lo menos yo,
at least me,
buscaba cualquier oportunidad para irme de casa.
I would find any opportunity to get out of the house.
Cualquier razón me parecía buena.
Any reason seemed like it was a good reason.
Y un hermano dijo, tengo que hacer una mudanza.
So a friend of mine said, hey, I have to move.
Tengo que cargar cajas.
I have to carry boxes.
Y yo dije, me apunto.
And I would say, hey, sign me up.
¿Y alguna vez has hecho una mudanza enfadado?
Have you ever moved people when you're mad?
Yo levantando cajas,
I'm lifting up boxes.
Enfadado.
And I'm mad.
levantando muebles,
And I'm picking up furniture.
enfadado.
And I'm mad.
Y vi un mueble
And I saw a piece of
que
furniture.
tenía que ser levantado por dos
And
personas.
it really required two people to lift it up.
Pero mi orgullo
But
estaba
my
enfadado.
pride was right there.
Y agarré el mueble,
So I grabbed the piece of
me
furniture.
lo puse encima
I put it on my
y de
shoulder.
repente escuché
And then all of a sudden I heard
crack.
clack.
En ese momento no sentí nada.
In that moment I didn't feel very much.
Pero cuando fui a casa,
But when I went home,
me duché,
I took a shower.
me metí en la cama
I got in bed.
y se me enfrió la espalda.
My back felt cold.
Me desperté del dolor.
And I woke up in pain.
Y el macho
And the macho
gritó.
yelled,
Lo más parecido a dolores de parto que he sentido.
it felt like I was in labor pains.
Al parecer se me había pinzado un nervio.
A nerve had been pinched in my back.
Mi mujer se despertó
My wife woke up.
y me dijo, ¿qué te
She
pasa?
said, what's wrong with
Y
you?
el macho le dijo,
And the macho inside of
¡Me
me said,
muero!
I'm dying.
Mi mujer me levantó de la cama.
My wife picked me up from the bed.
Yo me agarré a
I
ella
grabbed her.
y fui rumbo al coche.
I tried to get to the car.
Me senté en el asiento de copiloto,
I sat down in the passenger seat.
encorvado.
And I was all,
Mi mujer conduciendo al hospital.
and she was driving to the
Y en
hospital.
cada curva,
And at every curve,
cada vez que se me movía la espalda,
every time my back moved,
yo sentía que me moría.
I felt like I was dying.
Ahí entendí por qué los hombres no damos a luz.
And then I understood why we don't give labor? Why don't we don't give birth?
Somos el sexo débil.
We are the weaker sex.
Llegamos a la puerta del hospital
We finally arrived at the
y mi
hospital,
mujer dice, quédate aquí.
and my wife says, stay there.
Y la veo que entra dentro del
And I see that
hospital
she goes into the hospital,
y sale con una silla de ruedas.
and then she comes out with a wheelchair.
Ahora quiero que lo entiendas.
Ahora, I want you to understand this.
Yo era Itiel el
I
macho,
was Itiel the macho.
el que se imponía
I
sobre su
was
mujer.
the one that wanted to be the leader, the
Quizá ella me
dominant.
necesitaba, pero yo no la necesitaba.
Maybe she needed me, but I didn't need her.
Y de repente me viene con una silla de
And then
ruedas
she comes to me with a
y me
wheelchair.
dice, siéntate ahí.
And she says, sit down
Y yo le
there.
digo, ¿qué?
And I say, what?
Que te sientes ahí.
Sit down there in that
Digo, ¿qué,
wheelchair.
qué?
And I say, what?
Y el dolor
And the pain
me llevó a sentarme.
made me sit down.
Por hacerte corta la historia,
To just shorten the story,
después de unas inyecciones en el trasero,
after a few injections back here,
durante una semana de tratamiento,
after a week of treatment,
yo estaba inválido,
I was basically an invalid,
dependiente de mi mujer.
totally dependent on my wife.
Necesitaba que ella me cambiase la ropa,
She had to change my clothes.
necesitaba que ella me duchase,
She had to shower me.
necesitaba que ella me diese de comer.
She had to feed me.
Y me creerás si te digo
And would you believe me if I said
que cuando mi orgullo fue humillado,
that when my pride was humbled,
es como que se me cayó un velo de los ojos
it's almost like a veil fell off my
y pude
eyes,
ver la belleza
and I
de
could
esa
see the
persona
beauty of my wife.
que es mi esposa,
It's my wife.
que no era mi enemigo,
That wasn't my enemy.
era mi aliado.
She was my ally.
Ella me
She
sostenía
would sustain me.
y mi orgullo no me permitía ver
And my pride didn't allow me to
el
see that.
tesoro de quien estaba a mi lado.
She was the person at my side.
Y me creerás si te
And
digo
can you believe me if I
que
would say
cuando mi orgullo fue humillado,
that when my pride was humbled,
mi matrimonio fue salvado?
that my marriage was saved?
Lo que estoy intentando
What I'm
decir
trying to tell you today,
es que merece la pena ser humillado para salvar las relaciones importantes en tu vida.
it's worth being humbled so that we can save the most important
No pagues
relationships
tan
in our
caro
life.
tu orgullo. No pagues tan caro tu orgullo.
Not so that your pride would be staled.
No merece pagar por orgullo el precio de tu familia.
Your pride isn't worth the price of your family.
Merece la pena
It's worth it
ser humillado
to be humbled
por Dios
by God
si hace falta
if necessary
para salvar las relaciones importantes.
to save the important relationships in our life.
El tiempo se está
Hey,
terminando.
listen, the time is slipping by very
Dos
fast.
movimientos rápidos
2 movements real fast,
y terminamos.
and we'll finish.
El siguiente movimiento
The next movement,
del lavamiento de pies
the washing of the feet,
que puede salvar tu relación
that can save your relationship.
es ver correctamente la suciedad del otro.
To see correctly the dirt in others.
Una vez más,
Let me say it again.
ver correctamente
To see correctly
la suciedad del otro.
the faults or dirts in other.
Déjame explicarte.
Let me explain what I mean.
Cuando Jesús se dispuso a lavar los pies de Pedro
When Jesus was going to wash the feet of Peter,
y Pedro le dice, no me lavarás los pies
Peter said,
jamás.
no, you're not going to wash my feet.
Entonces Jesús le dice, Pedro,
And then Jesus says, well, Peter, then,
si no te lavo los pies,
unless I wash your feet,
no podremos tener verdadera unidad.
we can't have real unity amongst us.
Y entonces Pedro, que
And then
tenía
Peter
sangre
said,
hispana,
They had Hispanic blood.
dijo, entonces,
He said, then, Lord,
no solo los pies,
not only my feet,
sino de los pies a la cabeza.
wash my feet and my head and everything.
Y Jesús le dijo, no,
And Jesus
Pedro,
said, no, Peter.
no, Pedro,
No, Peter.
tú eres una persona limpia.
You are a clean person.
Solo necesitas que te lave los pies
All I need to do is wash your
que se han
feet.
ensuciado con el
Because
polvo del camino.
They're dirty from the dust of the trail.
¿Qué nos estaba intentando enseñar
What
Jesús?
was Jesus trying to tell Peter?
Jesús
Jesus
separó los pies de Pedro
stopped at the feet of Peter.
del corazón de Pedro.
He separated the feet of Peter from the heart of Peter.
Jesús separó
Jesus stopped
una suciedad circunstancial
a circumstantial dirtiness
de una suciedad en la identidad.
from the identity of dirtiness.
Separó
He separated
Dijo,
it.
¿tienes los pies
He
sucios?
said, yeah, you have dirty feet.
Es verdad.
It's true.
Están sucios.
They are true.
Pero tu
They're
corazón
dirty.
está limpio.
But your heart is clean.
Separó lo
He
circunstancial
separated the
de la
circumstantial
identidad.
from the identity.
Qué diferentes somos nosotros,
How
¿verdad?
different are we, really?
Nosotros vemos los pies sucios de alguien
We see the dirty feet of
y
someone.
no decimos tienes los pies
And we don't
sucios.
say you have dirty feet.
Emitimos un juicio contra su identidad
We say we judge their
y
identity.
decimos es sucio.
And we say you are a dirty person.
No sabemos separar la circunstancia puntual
We don't know how to separate the circumstances in the moment
de la identidad de esa
from the
persona.
identity of that
¿Y
person.
cuántos aquí saben
And how many of you here know
que lo más fácil es ver la suciedad en los pies
that it's easy to see the dirtiness in the feet
de las personas que tenemos más cerca?
of the people that are closest to us?
Nuestra esposa,
Our spouse,
nuestro esposo.
our husband.
Ah, yo sé.
Yeah.
Yo conozco tus pies.
Yeah, look at those feet.
De nuestros hijos,
Our kids,
de nuestros padres.
our parents.
Y en vez de separar una suciedad circunstancial
And instead of separating a circumstantial
de la
dirtiness
identidad,
from the identity,
emitimos un juicio.
we judge.
No decimos tiene los pies sucios.
We don't say you have dirty feet.
Decimos es sucio.
We say you are
Y
dirty.
nos separamos.
And we separate ourselves.
Emitimos un juicio
We
contra esa persona.
judge. We judge.
Y te voy a decir una
And I
cosa.
want to tell you something today.
Jesús no te llamó a ser el juez de otra
Jesus
persona.
never called you to be the judge of other people.
Jesús te llamó a ser el lavador de pies de tus
Jesus called you to
hermanos.
be the foot washer of other people.
Entonces, ¿qué tal si dejas la lupa
So how about you put your magnifying glass away?
con la cual estás mirando los deditos de los que te
As you
rodean,
look at the feet, magnify the feet of people that are around you,
emitiendo juicios en contra de su identidad
judging people about who they are,
por los errores
for their
que
mistakes
cometen?
that they make.
¿Qué tal si dejas la
What
lupa
if you leave your
y
magnifying
agarras la
glass
toalla
and you grab a towel
y te conviertes en un lavador de pies de
and
tu
you become a
esposa,
washer of feet to the
de tu
people that are
esposo,
around you, to your
de
husband,
tus hijos,
to your
de
kids,
tus hermanos?
and your brothers and sisters?
Yo quiero decir algo a las esposas.
I want to tell something to the wives
He
here.
hablado en el primer punto mucho de los hombres, los machos.
I talked a lot about to the men and the machos here.
Pero déjame decirle a las esposas.
But let me talk to you wives for a
Es un
second.
consejito.
This is a little counsel.
Yo sé
I know
que cuando corriges a tu marido
when you correct your husband
es porque quieres que él llegue a ser la mejor versión de hombre que puede ser.
because you want him to be the best version of a man that he can be.
Pero te voy a contar algo.
But let me tell you something.
No hay ningún hombre
There's no man
que llegue a ser
that will become
lo que Dios quiere que sea
what God wants him to be
con el juicio de su esposa.
with the judgment of his wife.
El juicio no transforma el corazón
The
de ningún
judgment
hombre.
doesn't change the heart of a man.
Es mejor decir,
It's better to say,
esposo,
husband,
tienes el pie sucio.
you have a dirty foot.
Esto está mal,
That's probably not right.
pero cariño,
But honey,
yo sé que tú no eres eso.
but I know that that's not who you are.
Yo sé que eso es circunstancial,
I know that that's circumstantial.
pero tu corazón es otro.
But I know your heart is
Tú
something
eres un
different.
hombre de Dios.
You're a man of God.
Tú eres un hombre
You're
íntegro.
a man that's clean.
Tú eres un buen líder en la
You're a
casa.
leader of our
Tú eres una
household.
persona de valores.
You're a person of value.
Por eso ese polvo en
That's
tus
why
pies,
that dust on your feet,
sé que es
I know
circunstancial.
it's there right
Es
now.
un error en tu
It's a
identidad
mistake in your
puntual,
identity.
puntual.
That's right now,
Pero tú no eres esto.
But that's not who you are.
Esposas que levantan el corazón de sus
Wives that would
esposos
raise up their husbands' hearts
y dicen, esposo, tú eres esto.
and say, I know who you are,
Y
really
habla
are.
la identidad de
And
su
speak into
esposo.
the identity of your
Son
husband.
esposas que transforman la
Those
vida
are
de
the
sus
kind of wives
maridos.
that help change the destiny of their husbands.
El juicio
It's the judgment.
no va a transformar la vida de
It's
tus
not going to
hijos,
change the life of your kids.
ni la vida de tus padres,
Nor the life of your parents.
ni la vida de tus vecinos.
Nor the life of your neighbors.
Eleva su corazón.
Lift up their hearts.
Declara lo que Dios dice que ellos
Declare what
son.
God says over them.
Y diles, mira, déjame que te arregle un poquito la uña de los pies.
Let me say, hey, let me fix the little bit, the toenail that
Ay,
you have
ay,
there.
ay, hay una uña aquí que parece una
There's
garra
a
de
little toenail that's a
leopardo.
little bit out of shape
Te
there.
voy a llamar velociraptor. El velociraptor.
I'm going to call you a dinosaur, the one that has long
Uñas
nails.
de águila, uñas de águila. ¿Alguien me está entendiendo?
Is anybody understanding me here
Tiene
today?
sentido. Y terminamos aquí.
And we close with this.
¿Alguien puede ayudarme al piano?
Can we have the worship team come up or someone on the piano?
El último movimiento
The last movement
para el lavamiento, para salvar una relación
to save a
que
relationship
podemos observar en el lavamiento de pies
that we can observe in the washing of the feet.
es verter gracia
It's to pour out grace
sobre el otro.
upon the other person.
Quiero pedirle a mi esposa que venga.
I'm going to ask that my wife would come on stage here.
Cariño, siéntate y quítate eso. Quiero que observes esto.
I want you to observe this.
¿Cuántos se dan cuenta
How many of you realize
que cuando Jesús vertió agua sobre los pies de sus discípulos,
when Jesus poured water on the feet of his disciples,
no estaba vertiendo solo agua,
he wasn't just putting water,
sino que estaba vertiendo gracia
he was pouring grace
sobre sus pies?
on their feet.
No sé si te has dado cuenta de
I
este
don't know if you've
detalle.
ever noticed this detail.
Jesús lavó los pies
Jesus washed the feet
de unos discípulos
of some disciples
que unas horas después iban a usar esos pies
that hours later would use those same feet
para correr y abandonarle.
to run away from him and abandon him.
Y Jesús lo sabía.
And Jesus knew it.
Jesús sabía que estaba lavando los pies
Jesus knew that he was washing the feet
de unas personas
of some people
que unas horas después iban a usar esos pies
that hours later would use those same feet
para correr y dejarlo solo.
to run and leave him alone.
Pero Jesús lavó los pies antes de la ofensa.
But Jesus washed their feet before their offense.
No esperó que la ofensa surgiese.
He didn't wait for the offense to happen.
Él lavó los pies
He washed the feet
antes que esos pies cometiesen la ofensa.
before those feet would commit the offense.
Es como si Jesús estuviese diciendo:
Almost, it's like Jesus were saying,
yo no decidiré si te perdono cuando cometas el error.
I'm not going to wait until to decide whether I forgive you when you commit a error.
Yo ya he decidido perdonarte los errores futuros.
I've already decided in advance to forgive you.
Jesús
Jesus,
quitó su manto
he took his towel
de autoridad rabínica
of authority, rabbinical authority,
y tomó una toalla
and he took a towel
y se la ciñó.
and he put it around his waist.
Se inclinó frente al otro
He bowed before his disciples,
y en esta posición
and in this position,
vio correctamente la suciedad de los otros
he saw correctly the dirt
sin
of his
juzgar su
disciples,
corazón.
but he saw their heart.
Y entonces se dispuso a verter gracia.
And Jesus started pouring grace.
Y es interesante
And it's interesting
notar esto,
to notice this,
que entre las personas a las que Jesús lavó los pies
that the people that Jesus washed their feet,
se encontraba un hombre llamado Tomás,
there was a man by the name of Thomas
que constantemente dudaba de Jesús,
that constantly doubted,
que constantemente lo ponía en
that
cuestionamiento.
constantly put him in doubt.
¿Sabes lo que hace Jesús
You know what Jesus did
con los que dudan,
with those who doubt,
con los que le cuestionan?
those who question him?
Les lava los pies,
He washes their feet
vierte gracia.
and he pours out grace.
Por muy sorprendente que te pueda parecer,
No matter how surprising they may seem to you,
Jesús lavó los pies de un hombre llamado Pedro,
Jesus washed the feet of a man named Peter
que le hizo una promesa a Jesús
that made a promise to Jesus
de que no lo dejaría
that he would
solo.
never abandon him.
Pero cuando vino el problema,
But when the problem
le
came,
dejó solo y le negó.
he abandoned him and denied him.
¿Sabes lo que hace Jesús con los que no cumplen sus
You know what
promesas?
Jesus does with people that don't follow through on their promises?
Les lava los pies,
He washes their feet.
vierte gracia.
He pours out grace.
Y por muy escandaloso que nos pueda parecer,
And no matter how scandalous this may appear,
entre aquellas personas a las cuales Jesús lavó los pies,
among those people that Jesus washed their feet,
había un hombre llamado Judas,
there was a man by the name of
al
Judas,
que Jesús había amado.
someone that Jesus had loved.
Lo había llamado amigo.
He had loved him like a son.
Y Judas lo traicionó con un beso.
And Judas betrayed him with a dirty kiss.
Usó un símbolo de intimidad para
He
traicionarlo.
used a symbol of intimacy to betray him.
¿Sabes lo que hace Jesús con los que le traicionan?
You know what Jesus does with those that betray him?
Les lava los pies,
He washes their feet.
vierte gracia
He pours out grace
y los deja ir.
and he lets them go.
¿Qué estoy intentando decir con esto?
What am I trying to say with this?
Que la única manera
That the only way
de salvar una relación
to save a relationship
es asumiendo
is to assuming
que la otra persona te va a fallar,
that the other person is going to fail you.
que te va a ofender,
They're going to offend you.
que en algún momento algo pasará.
That in one moment something's going to happen.
Y no decidimos en caliente si va a haber gracia o no va a haber
And we don't
gracia.
decide in the moment of heat whether there's going to be grace or not.
Lo decidimos en días como hoy.
We decide in days like today.
Decidimos, cariño,
We decide, honey,
para nosotros la única opción
for us the only option
es el perdón.
is forgiveness.
Nosotros vamos a cerrar con un candado la puerta del divorcio.
We're going to close with a lock the door of divorce.
Al comienzo de nuestro matrimonio yo
At the
usaba la
beginning of
palabra divorcio
At the beginning of our marriage, I would use the word divorce
en nuestras discusiones.
in our arguments.
Aunque no lo pensaba realmente, quería darla miedo.
It wasn't really real. I wasn't thinking that much about it, but I wanted to scare her.
Era como una manipulación emocional.
It was an emotional
Yo
manipulation.
decía, pues si quieres nos divorciamos.
I would say, oh, if you want, we'll just get a divorce.
Y el Espíritu Santo me habló
And the Holy Spirit spoke to
y
me.
me dijo, cierra esa puerta.
Close that door.
No hay opción.
There's not an option.
Solo podrás tener el matrimonio que yo quiero que tengas
You can only have the marriage that I want you to have
cuando la palabra divorcio ya no esté en la
when the word
conversación.
divorce is no longer part of your conversation.
Solo hay una opción,
There's an option, only one option.
el perdón.
Forgiveness.
Costará,
It'll cost.
será difícil.
It will be hard.
Alguien tiene que morir en la cruz.
Someone has to die.
Alguien tiene que dejar de juzgar.
Someone has to stop judging.
Alguien tiene que verter gracia.
Someone has to pour out grace.
Pero si lo haces,
But if you do it,
aunque parece que pierdes,
even though it may seem like you're losing,
en realidad estás ganando
in reality you're gaining
a la otra persona.
to the other person.
Tu matrimonio,
Your marriage,
tus hijos,
your children,
tus papás,
your parents,
tu comunidad,
your community,
tu nación.
your nation.